Just look at the lacing on that glass. I mean, for a can pour, yeah, I'm pretty happy. Hello and welcome back to the channel and welcome to another Guinness video. Now, to be fair, it has been a while since I've covered anything from the Golden Harp, but it was time. This beer has actually been out for a while now, so yeah, I'm a bit behind the curve. However, one thing I would like to address today is how to pour a proper pint of Guinness. Now, for those of you who have been around for a while will know that a long time ago, and I mean a very long time ago, I did a short, actually posted it to a different channel, about how to pour the perfect pint of Guinness Draught from a can. That video that I normally posted on a kind of secondary channel that I've actually closed down since, I ended up re-uploading to this channel and is still done, well, better than any other video. Now, I'm annoyed because the production quality on that video was particularly low and I wasn't that used to talking to the camera at that point in time. And even more annoying, the can of Guinness that I used at the time was actually quite old, which resulted in not the perfect pour. So I'm going to go through it again and see if we can figure out the perfect way to pour this can of Guinness, even if it is the cold brew coffee version. Before we break into it then, here is a quick look at the can. I mean, it's pretty standard Guinness. I mean, yes, it is obvious that it is the cold brew coffee beer version, but as you turn it around, it gets a little bit more kind of distinct away from the original with that kind of flare on the side. Load of info, as you would expect from a major brand like Guinness. But yeah, it looks all right. So then, for the pour, normally I just open a beer and pour it when I'm reviewing beer, but this one is going to be a bit different. So, in my experience, sit it down nicely, and if you can see the top there, I've got it that way on. I'm going to give a few taps to the opening that's currently closed, grab my freshly washed proper Guinness glass, that bit is quite important, and then just slowly and gently open it like so. Pull the tag down so that it's opened fully, push it back again, and then, with some luck, we're going to get a nicely poured can of Guinness. But I'm not going to do it as I normally would, because the art to this is just to get this beer out of this can as quickly as possible, which I know is not the same as the way you do it in a pub. But we're not in a pub, so it has a different technique. So, here we go then. I'm just going to start off slightly tilted until we get about halfway up, and then I'm going to straighten everything off. So let's go for it, shall we? Fingers crossed. I'm starting off with the can as far in as I can, and then let it, as we straighten it up, just let it travel up the glass. And now let it settle. Tiny bit to go. Okay, I think we are done, and if I don't say so myself, that looks pretty damn good. Obviously, the cans are smaller than glasses, so you don't get a full pint, which is a bit annoying, but the premise remains the same. If we take a look at that, I mean, come on now. You're not telling me that's a bad pour. If we just drop it down a bit, you'll see just maybe the odd bubble in the top there. It is possible to pour out of a can without getting any, but there's really not a lot, as you can tell, and yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. So that's how you pour a draft can of Guinness. What is this Guinness cold brew actually like? Let me just bring the can back in so everyone knows what we're talking about here. And then the pint itself, well, we've already looked at it a bit, but visually, let's be honest, that's a pretty incredible looking pint. I don't just mean my pour. Jet black body-ish, we'll get into that in a minute, properly smooth, super tiny bubble foam head, sits about just over a finger in width as it should. In this cold brew coffee version, I don't know if it's coming across on camera, but the head isn't quite kind of the absolute white you'd expect on a regular Guinness. It's just got a very slight tan tinge, but it's really light. So I don't even think it's even coming across on the camera. If I hold this up to the light though, well, I can see it without really holding it up. Right at the bottom here, let me just grab my torch so you know what I mean. Can you see there? There is a very light kind of reddy brown hue coming through. Now, I can't remember the last time I reviewed Guinness, and I'm not sure if that is particularly normal, but I've got a feeling this beer is just slightly lighter. So then, on to the aromas. Well, there's no lie, it is distinctly different to a regular Guinness. you do get that kind of nice mineral clean sensation that you would expect from the brand, but I have to say the aroma on this is very, very nice, and it reminds me of tiramisu, which, yes, alcohol, coffee, it's all in there. It really does, but there's also the kind of syrupy sweetness to the aroma as well that does just smell like a tiramisu dessert. Yes, there's coffee in there, but as I say, it's slightly sweeter, slightly cakey almost, probably because of the malt in the beer, and I don't think I'd ever get bored of that aroma. So let's give it a try, shall we? Cheers. It's interesting because I spend so much time reviewing really slightly obscure, I don't want to use the word overproduced because they're not, they're produced to perfection. And, you know, they're big and they're brash and they're intentional in every aspect of them, craft beers. And this isn't one. It's a bit thin. It's not unflavoured, but it's not exactly rich, but it's very nice. As a single experience on its own, sit down to a pint like that. Keep in mind this is a 4% beer, and it's keeping true to the Guinness Draught form. It's slightly, well, it's funny, isn't it? Because everyone expects Guinness to be this big, heavy experience, but actually, in terms of calories, Guinness is about the lowest calorie pint there is going. And whilst, yes, compared to generic lagers, it may seem thick and indulgent, compared to modern craft stouts, actually, it's pretty light and tame, and as is this. But that's not necessarily a bad thing. Up front, it does actually come across quite creamy because of the head on it. It's not until it gets to the back of the palate and it kind of goes a bit thin, a bit washy, but at the same time, that becomes almost refreshing. There's kind of a iced tea vibe about this, but no, just iced coffee. And I mean, it really is just Guinness Draught with some coffee in it. That is exactly what it comes across as. And they've done it pretty well. So, quick top to bottom taste test so you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Initially, super low carbonation, tiny bit sweet on the front of the tongue. Not a lot else to say really at that point. First third of the tongue, that sweetness remains, but then you start to build a little bit of that traditional Guinness stout bitterness. It's not big, it's not brash, it's not offensive, but it is there. And then mid-palate, you start to get some real, I guess, more expressive coffee notes. It's a bit more rich, roasty espresso notes. They're not overly bitter, they're not overly dark, but they're definitely, I guess, a step closer to real cold brew coffee than the kind of slightly sweetened tiramisu nature of the aroma was. And then just before you swallow, a few sweeter, maybe more vanilla notes come in. You can see where that sweetness from the aroma comes from. And then for the aftertaste, it's pretty much what you would expect from a normal Guinness. Semi-dry, a tiny bit bitter, a touch of sweetness from the malt, and as it fizzles out, there's just this kind of subtle, sweet, almost cafe crema experience that lingers. It's not big, again, it's not brash, it's just a tip of the hat almost to that sweeter part of an espresso, and yeah, I like it. It's not bad. It's not a fantastically produced beer. There are, if we're talking about technicalities, a myriad of problems with it. But as a mass-produced, I guess, adjunct beer, yeah, I've got no issue. And that really is all I've got to say about it. So as always, thank you very much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please like it. If you haven't already, subscribe if you will be so kind. And I'll catch you next time. Cheers.